a minister on there who was talking about finding God and referred to it that we all need to be detectives of the divine. And literally, Becky jumped up off the couch, grabbed a pencil and piece of paper, and she said, "That's your talk title next week." So that's my talk title today. So I want to talk about the search for God. You know, and it takes many forms. And some people, when they search for God, do an external search. You know, they might look for a new religion. Some people do it with hallucinogenic drugs. And some people do it by looking for the teacher of the month, you know, somebody who's got the latest book out. And some people, probably most of us right now, do it because we know the search begins and ends by going within. That we remove ourselves from the noise of the world and listen to that still small voice that tells us who we really are. And Ernest Holmes wrote a lot about this, that still small voice and intuition. And so I have a couple of things that he wrote. He said that there's a divine pattern in everything. And the divine pattern is the Christ that's waiting for you and I, waiting within for you and I to recognize it. And I have a quote that he wrote. He said, "There's an intuition in you which already knows that you are one with good, that your destiny is certain, and you must listen to that intuition, for it is the voice of God that's within you." And so that's basically the theme that we really don't know of today, for me today, that we don't need to be out there reaching that voice is wherever we are. Joan Borisenko has a new book out called A Woman's Journey to God. And in that book, she says that, you know, our faith changes as our life experiences change. That there are times in our life when we have victories, and there are times in our life when we get defeated. And as we grow older, hopefully we become wiser, and we experience love, and we question, and we reevaluate. And she said, you know, and sometimes we come to our own beliefs, and sometimes we internalize maybe the beliefs that our parents had, or some clergy person told us, or our spouse, or it could be our friends. And she said, you know, none of that is what's important. The questions that are important is, do our beliefs help us to be better people? Do our beliefs give us strength? Do we make a difference in the world? And Joan Borisenko has a PhD, and she's done a lot of counseling, and she said some of the deepest pain that we can have is alienation from God. And until we fix that, until we come to a place of knowing God in our own way, until we do that we can never really have peace of mind. So I just read before something from The Call by Oriah Mountain Dreamer. And in the book, she talks about after she had some degree of success, because those books were really successful, and she's a wonderful speaker. Beck and I went to a workshop that she gave, and she said after she became successful, a friend came up to her one day and said, "Oh, isn't this wonderful?" She said, "It's what you've always wanted, and it's come true for you." And Oriah Mountain Dreamer said that night, when she got into bed, she thought what her friend said, and she said, "All I ever really wanted was God, not the success. All I wanted was God." And she describes herself, she said, you know, I'm just an ordinary woman with an extraordinary hunger to live in the awareness of the sacred mystery, to learn who I am and why I'm here. And so one of the things she's done a few times in her life is to go on vision quests. And so she made the decision to go on a 40-day vision quest. And she wrote in the book, she said, "I have 2 sons I love, and I was engaged to somebody who had absolutely no understanding of why I would want to do this, but he was really supportive." So she goes on this 40-day vision quest, which means she's going to go live somewhere all by herself in a tent for 40 days. And she was eating, I think she said every third day she would eat food, and then for 3 days she would, the plan was just to drink water. On the 5th day, she got really sick. And by the 6th day, she couldn't hold anything down, and she was really, really sick. And she hears a grandmotherly voice that says, "Go home." And she says back to the voice, "Go home? No, I want to know, and I'll do whatever it takes." And this voice says, "Oriah, go home. You can't get there from here. What you're looking for can't be earned or paid for with suffering or hard work. It's a gift. It must be received. Try easier." And Oriah said to the voice, "I don't know how to do easier." And the voice said back to her, "You keep fighting with reality, Oriah. It's a losing battle." And you know, when I read that, I thought, what it's saying is that we don't have to force a relationship with God. We don't have to break our neck trying to have this deep relationship, because Spirit is always waiting for us, and easier works better. So I read a couple of blogs this week, and one of them was by a fellow named Steve McSwain, who's a former Baptist minister. And in his blog, he said, in recent years, and he didn't say how many, at least if he did, I don't remember, but he said 34 million people have left organized religion. 34 million people. And he said, yet spirituality is still a big part of their life. And he's one of them, okay? He was a minister, and he left. And he said, why are they leaving? He said they're leaving because instead of finding a place where people are interested in saving the world, they're more interested in saving themselves. Instead of finding God, what we find is a list of do's and don'ts, where they tell you what to think, what to believe, and how to live your life. And he said, and even within some church, there are in-groups and out-groups. We're okay, you're not okay. And he said, and people are fed up with churches condemning gays and lesbians while they hide clergy pedophiles. And so all of that, he's saying, is going on, and part of that is what caused him to leave. And so he said after he left, he thought to himself, now where do I go? Where do I go now to find God? And what he realized after doing a lot of internal work is that God's grace isn't limited to just a few people. And he said, when I stopped trying to find God, God found me. And he said, I learned that we don't need to do anything to find God. Maybe what we need to do is give up the doing and just start being. And in another blog, he wrote five ways to find God. So I wanted to share them with you. And he said the first thing we can do to find God is to change your thinking about yourself and God. And the first thing is, we aren't separated from God. That separation is an illusion. And he said, Jesus never talked about original sin. And you can look in any scripture, none of the scriptures talk about original sin. God is in you, and so why would you look outside for who is right there, right in you? The second thing he said we can do to find God is to regard every thought of God as God. And he explained it with a couple of quotes, one of which is from Rumi. And Rumi wrote, I have lived on the rim of insanity, wanting to know reasons, knocking on doors. The door opens. I've been knocking from the inside. So, that's, Rumi is saying, I'm there, I've been there all along, I've been going crazy. It's like asking a fish, Rumi didn't say this, but it's like asking a fish, where's the water, I mean, the fish is in the water. And that's what Rumi's saying. I've been inside all along, and I've been knocking and knocking, trying to get in. And McSwain says, when we think of God, it's God awakening in us. And then he uses another quote from Emerson, who said, though we travel the world over to find the beautiful, know that we carry it within us, or we find it not. The third thing he said we can do to find God is practice believing that God dwells in you already. He said believing has little to do with content and more to do with conduct. When we believe that God is in us, we start to act and feel differently, which leads to his fourth way, which is believe God dwells in others. And his fifth way is to be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am God. And he said that means to relax, to let go, to release control. Don't try to find God. You can't find what's not lost. It was interesting. I think last week I talked about something from Michael Beckwith, who said the same thing. You can't find what you haven't lost. Separation is an illusion. And he wrote, the presence you seek is the person you are. The presence you seek is the person you are. And I read an interesting example about being still and knowing your God. Sue Kidd Monk is a writer who said she went on a spiritual retreat. And on one of the days, she went down to a pond to just be still. And it worked for a little bit. And then she thought, what am I doing? I need to be doing something. And so she got up because she couldn't be still. And on her way back, she saw a monk sitting by a tree, absolutely, perfectly still. And she just watched him for a while. And later that night, she went up to him and she said, I was watching you. And how do you do it? How can you be so still? I can't do it. And he said to her, he put his hand on her shoulder, and he said, I want you to hear what I'm going to tell you from the tip of your head to the bottom of your toes. He said, when you're waiting, you're not doing nothing. When you're waiting, you're not doing nothing. You're doing the most important work there is. You're allowing your soul to grow up. And if you can't sit still and wait, you can't become what God intended you to be. So what I'm going to talk to you about next, for me, had the most profound effect on me of all the stuff I read this week to prepare this message. And I wasn't sure I was going to tell you why, but I will. It's by a rabbi named Eric Yaffe. And he said that when people come to him, he struggles to answer the question, how do I connect with God? That's a tough question for him to talk to people about. And so here's what his answer is on how do I connect with God. His answer is to be open to the world around you, to reawaken your capacity to wonder, to make room for the sense of awe you had as a child. And he said there are divine sparks all around if you let yourself feel them, and that we can emulate God's behavior, like when we feed the hungry or we house the homeless. And I had an aha moment when I read what I just told you, particularly the part about reawaken your capacity to wonder, and even more so, make room for the sense of awe you had when you were a child. When I read that, I stopped, and my own personal spiritual practice that I try to do every day is I read spiritual things, I pray, and I meditate for an hour. But I have days when I don't do it. I mean, I have days like Friday was a really busy day for Becky and I didn't have an hour to meditate. And some days I don't feel like praying, But the awe piece, there's one thing that I do every day that I have this sense of awe. And I realized that my deepest spiritual practice is Becky. There is never a day that goes by that sometime during the day, and I mean this every day, literally, and sometimes more than once, that I don't see her and think, how am I lucky? How did I ever attract this woman into my life? And that I thank God for her every day. And it hit me when I read that about being in awe, that Meister Eckhart once said, if the only thing you do is, the only prayer you pray is to say thank you, that's enough. And that's enough for any of us. You know, I wasn't sure I was going to do this because it would embarrass her, but she told me it was okay. But that's enough. And that sense of awe, you know, for me it's more important than if I don't pray, but I'm thankful for her. That's good. That's enough, you know. That we find God in unexpected places, and it's a personal journey. Maybe somebody else has awe at the ocean or in nature, or, you know, because they've got talent or whatever it is, you know. It doesn't have to be religion. Like I said before, you know, that the former minister said that some religions translate their beliefs into hurting people. We find God by giving and receiving compassion. And we can find God by looking at our own life and realizing that there's so much good in it. It has to be more. It has to be more than coincidence that we have so much good. Andrew Cohen wrote a book called Evolutionary Enlightenment. And in the book, he asked the question, what does it mean to embrace God's purpose as your own? And he said, and he asked, where can you find the courage, the commitment, the energy to embrace something that vast? And then he answers the question. He says, it's already within you. It's already right there. And when we awaken to that, and when we realize we're the only one that can do it, nobody else can do it for us, nobody else can embrace God's purpose for us, we have to do it. And so he says, you know, when you ask, who am I? Why am I here? Is there a purpose to all of this? He says, these questions are answered at the deepest possible level when you point the finger at yourself and say, yes. Yes to doing the work, and to finding out, who am I? Why am I here? Is there a purpose? You know, the dancer Martha Graham once wrote, there is a vitality, a life force that is translated through you into action. And because there is only one of you in all time, this expression is unique. And if you block it, it will never exist through any other medium and be lost. So she's saying, you know, if we don't engage on that search to find our connection to spirit, to find our connection to the one that created it all, if we don't do it, and in doing that, find out why we're here and what we're supposed to be here, there's never going to be another one of us, and it gets lost for all time. So Harold Kushner is a rabbi who's written a lot of books, and in one of them, he tells about a time he was asked to go to, I think it was Johns Hopkins, and to give a talk. And after he gave the talk, they came to him and they said, there's a patient here who knew you were coming, and he asked if he could meet with you. And you don't have to do this. We'll tell him you're tired if you don't want to meet with him. But he said your books have touched him. And so Kushner agreed to meet with him. And it turned out he was a young, I think he was 32-year-old Episcopal minister who was in the hospital, and he was dying of AIDS. And he wanted to talk to Kushner. So they have this conversation, and Kushner asks him how he's experiencing God in this journey that he's on. And he said, you know what the best thing to come out of this is? He said, it's something I always wanted to be true, something I always wanted to believe in. And that is, no matter how much I've messed up my life, God hasn't given up on me. And he said, I felt God's presence in this room the entire time I've been here. And he can love me even when I can't love myself. And he said, you know, in a few days, they're gonna send me home. Not because I'm gonna live, but there's nothing more they can do for me. So they want to take this bed and use it for someone they can help. And so they're going to send me home, to die. And he said, I don't know if my congregation will take me back anymore now that they know I have AIDS and now that they know I'm gay. But I really hope they will, because I have one last lesson that I want to teach them. The lesson my illness has taught me. And this is what he wrote. He said, the lesson is, you don't have to be perfect. Just do your best, and God will accept you as you are. Don't expect your children to be perfect. Love them for their faults, for their trying and stumbling, just as God loves you. And I think that's the lesson for today. All we need to do is be who we are, and God will find us. So thank you for being here. God bless you. Have a great week.